When we first got the reports in as to what was going on in the city early on the morning of August the 31st, we found out that Greater New Orleans, of course, was on lockdown. Only first responders were allowed into the area. No one, even from our facility, was allowed to go in and assess the damage. The building, as you can see on the slide, the lower picture with the windows blown out was the VA regional office in New Orleans. The building was totally uninhabitable. There was no electricity, no running water, no sewage, no basic essential functions at all. The infrastructure was pretty much gone. The area codes for the telephone systems were gone. It was the worst case scenario for our facility at that time. The human capital was critical. We had no idea where our employees were because, of course, we had a cascade plan, but when the area codes disappeared, so did that cascade plan. We had no way to get in touch with anyone. We knew that they had been scattered to states all across the United States. That was our biggest problem at that point, trying to find our employees. Then the next thing was, what do we do? What is the damage to the employees' homes? You have to take into consideration the psyche of the individuals that were going on at that time. Did anybody's family sustain a fatality? Were there injuries? It was just a point in time when POOP plan, as we had at that time, was not necessarily sufficient enough. Where were our backup tapes? What was going to happen with the folders? We have hundreds of, tens of thousands of paper folders, a paper-centric society in VBA. So shortly thereafter, the first thing our priority was human capital. We had to find our employees. It was strictly by word of mouth and texting that we found all but one of our employees within the first week after the hurricane. Fortunately, our backup tapes, like I said, had gone with our IT specialists, and one was in Mississippi and one was in Tennessee. They were sent to our network support center in St. Petersburg via FedEx, and at that point, our servers were recreated over the weekend following Katrina. Fortunately, there are no mission essential functions that are handled within each VBA regional office because we are centralized at data centers across the country. Our third priority was, of course, those veterans' claims files. What are we going to do? We had active files that needed to be worked. Veterans needed their money. We had to have employees go in, retrieve 13,000 paper files in a building that had no air conditioning, and the files were on the 5th floor. Then we had to secure the remaining files because the city was still on lockdown and basically under martial law, and we had a hole in the middle of the building in the file room. Then our fourth priority was to find office space to relocate our facility. Being a government agency, we could not be down for any length of time. Fortunately, being centralized, our veterans still got paid. December 12, 2005, almost 3 months after, well, more than 3 months after the hurricane, we had to move into a temporary location, which provided several challenges. It was on the west bank of the Mississippi River. We were distributed into 3 buildings in 2 different cities. Veterans' claims files had to be transported manually across the Mississippi River. Emergency services were by 2 different entities. The computer rooms were not under standards due to the lack of viable office space within the city at that time. We had to get it back up and running. Veterans' claims files being transported had to redo our entire thinking by reinforcing a van with steel cages and ensuring that only government employees transported those original documents. That was as of May 12th. We did not move into a new facility until May 8th of this year. So now we are currently in one location. Lessons learned is now everything is on the 9th floor, so we do not have to worry about flooding as far as our office space goes. The lessons learned were that human capital was number 1. We've instituted plans now where we have a national 1-800 number in the event of a disaster. Those employees are instructed to call the number and register, and they're given a confirmation number so that management knows where all employees are and can get in touch with them at a moment's notice. We also have other things in place where our backup tapes, as soon as right now we're still on backup tapes, and, you know, it's a little antiquated, but that's what we're doing. As soon as a hurricane enters the Gulf of Mexico, our tapes are transported. One set is sent to another location within VA, and then the second set is sent to our third-party vendor, who in turn move our tapes to a safer location, because basically with a hurricane zone with Katrina that was the size of Great Britain, moving your tapes 40, 50, 60 miles away was not the answer. Even as far away as Muskogee, Oklahoma, probably would not have been sufficient at that time. Next slide, please.
Hello, this is Joe Kim from Nova Datacom. Patrice, thank you very much for that case study. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to talk about some of the technology that's available today that can help us, I guess, enhance your COOP capabilities. Patrice talked about tapes, and we're going to briefly talk about disaster recovery requirements, utilizing virtualization for disaster recovery, WAN acceleration, as well as secure remote access. So the first thing you want to do for disaster recovery is you want to minimize risk, minimize downtime, and also control costs. Here's some data that we've gathered from our publications. And a lot of times, it's very difficult to recover from a natural disaster such as Katrina if you aren't prepared. An effective disaster recovery is also business imperative, but it's very difficult to achieve. So in effective IT contingency planning, you have to have a capable backup site and a comprehensive plan that you can basically test. Some of the efficient COOP plans need to overcome minimizing downtime, again, reducing risk, controlling costs, and providing a smooth, successful transition, and most of all, preventing data loss and loss of human life. So what we're going to talk about here is the traditional backup method. A lot of times people confuse backup with backup and recovery with disaster recovery. Backup and recovery is not the same as disaster recovery. Traditionally, what you do is you have your primary data center, you have your primary site with all of your applications running on your servers. You back everything up to tape. You deliver those tapes to a secondary location, and then once the tapes are at the secondary location, you have to ensure your secondary location, first of all, has equipment that can handle and load the tapes on there, but at the same time, you have to ensure that they're all going to work. So this method is really a boot and pray. It's unreliable, it's inefficient, and again, it does not meet the 12-hour requirement. So if you are in an environment where you're taking the tapes, storing it off-site, it's going to take more than 12 hours to get the tapes in and out of there. So some of the challenges, again, is cost. If you are building out a COOP site, traditionally, it's been known to build out your backup sites with one-to-one identical hardware. So essentially, you're building out one-to-one sites that cost double what you actually currently need. It's also complexity. There's a lot of management and provisioning complexity. You have to do a lot of complex network engineering, as well as application, specific business needs that need to be addressed when you have two different sites. You also can't test it a lot because you have such a huge environment. And also reliability. Complex solutions are hard to test and require specialized training for personnel. So that's another key challenge. This is an example of how you do a recovery process. So in a non-virtualized environment where you have one servers on one OS, you typically have all your backup tapes, and once you have good backups, you configure your hardware, you install the operating system, you configure your OS, you install the backup agent, and then you load the tapes. And meanwhile, while you're getting this set up, there's also a lot of delta time where you're losing data. And in a virtualized environment, because everything is stored on your SANs or storage area networks, you simply just power on your virtual machines because they are hardware independent. And with this solution, you can have your COOP site operational in minutes to hours, not days to weeks. And we'll go a little bit deeper into how this is done.